Well, hello there, motherfuckers, and welcome to a follow-up video to Avengers Endgame. Now, I bet you guys thought that, I liked Avengers Endgame. A lot of people were mad that I didn't love it, but I did like it. I just, I'm critical of it. I'm a big superhero fan. I'm a big Marvel fan, obviously, pretty much more towards Spider-Man, who was barely even in the movie. But that really has nothing to do with it. Because I'm not like a Spider-Man fanboy where he's got to be in everything. He was in Infinity War, quite a bit, which I really enjoyed more than Endgame. And I said that in my Endgame review. But that doesn't mean that this is by any means a bad movie. I mean, even in the title, I even said Endgame is good. It's not great, and it's very long, longer than it needed to be. But a lot of people take that as, you gotta be like, it's excellent or it sucks. And God forbid I said that it sucks. But I didn't think that it sucks. To say that the movie sucked, I'd be lying, because there were a lot of parts I enjoyed. Which brings me to the topic of this video. This is going to be the top 10 things that I really liked a lot in Endgame. Because I was like, I don't know. I kind of got the impression that a lot of people thought that I didn't like it. And that's what's so frustrating about a lot of times. Because, a lot of people say you shouldn't have to explain yourself to fanboys. You shouldn't have to explain yourself to detractors. But hey, it makes for good material here on YouTube, right? If I just let everything slide and I don't really have to worry about this, the channel wouldn't be exciting. We wouldn't be producing videos that are really enjoyable to watch. So, I'll bathe in the criticism of people, coming at me for not loving the film, not understanding what, why they would bow down to this movie like a holy god, because many people are treating that like this. Like this movie is like the Messiah. Like this is the Jesus Christ movie. To say that this is like the best movie of all time, I'm sorry, I don't get the same feeling from when I watch a Star Wars movie, even though I really, love Marvel Comics and I love the characters. I don't, for some reason, when I watch these movies, it's just probably how they're put together. Because I said, when I watch the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films, I get chills. I feel emotional during certain scenes, like the train scene. And there's a lot of people who hate those movies. They used to love them, but they hate them. But anyway, guys, let's get down to the list and see what I really liked about this movie. So this is in no particular order. I didn't really put together, this list based on what was the best. It's just like a top 10 list for fun. So don't take it too seriously. But these are 10 things that I really liked about the film and I felt were worth mentioning and featuring on a list. So at number 10, the jokes. I thought that there was a lot of good humor in this movie. Probably even better humor than Infinity War, actually. There was a lot of good, jokes with Spider-Man, I don't feel so good, and even jokes that were better than that in Infinity War. But Endgame had a lot of great jokes. With Ant-Man, with Paul Rudd, it goes without saying, Paul Rudd is, just knows how to be funny. You think back to, the fact that he was in 40-Year-Old Virgin. He wasn't the funniest guy in that movie, but, he's been in some really funny movies. And even in, I never got to see the Ant-Man and the Wasp, but the first Ant-Man was a really good, enjoyable Marvel film. A very underrated one, I feel. That doesn't really get a lot of appreciation. So, it's no surprise that Paul Rudd did a good job here. The part where they were, making fun of Captain America's ass and his tights, and they said, that's America's ass. And then later on in the movie, like an hour later, they revisit the same joke, and Captain America looks at himself, when they go back in time, and he goes, yeah, that is America's ass. I thought that was funny. The scenes with the Hulk, I already talked about, him in the diner with Ant-Man, with the kids, when they want to get the Hulk's autograph, but they don't want to, they take a picture with him, but they don't want to take a picture with Ant-Man because he's not as popular. There was a lot of good scenes that were very funny. Rocket Raccoon, I'll talk about that a little bit later in this list. But, very good jokes that were funny. It knew when to be serious and when to joke around. There was a good mix of humor. And, when they did do humor, it felt a lot better than when they did humor in Age of Ultron because they didn't stop dead to do the humor. It flowed well. Like, when they did in Age of Ultron, there was, just scenes when they just kept piling on jokes. And it was like, okay, are we ever going to get back to the movie? Here, the jokes are kind of, strung throughout the movie so it doesn't really interfere with the story because I hate when that happens. That's very unnatural humor. Humor is actually funnier when it's more spontaneous and they don't have to okay, now's time for a joke. Okay, there might have been some scenes where maybe they could have dispensed with the humor, but I thought it was done more tactfully in Endgame. At number 9, chemistry of the actors. I think with 3/4 of the Marvel Universe gone, they picked the right heroes to team up here. You had a representative from each series, kind of. They didn't forget about Guardians of the Galaxy with Rocket Raccoon. You had Tony Stark with Iron Man. Thor, Captain America. You had most of your major heroes, but it was interesting, having Rocket Raccoon, who's not really the main character of Guardians of the Galaxy, Black Widow in there, Hawkeye. It felt a bit more ragtag, that you didn't have everybody in there. It kind of felt definitely they were more alone and isolated, and they really played off well on one another. And the jokes going back and forth between it. The cast really felt like they were on. And they played off of each other very well. I mean, Robert Downey Jr. seems like he has, to me, the best actor, obviously. He seems like he could, pelt out those jokes and have, spontaneous chemistry with just about anybody. He brings out the best when he's on the screen with another actor. It always seems like they seem more on when they're in the same scene with Tony Stark, with Robert Downey Jr. But, these are good actors. I have said this. Even though I don't think throughout the whole entire, Marvel Cinematic Universe that they, used everybody to the best of their potential, but they did pick the best actors. At this point, I couldn't imagine anybody playing their roles better. I even adjusted to Mark Ruffalo. So the chemistry is good. And that brings us to number 8. Mark Ruffalo is the Hulk. This movie, for some reason, it took several movies for me to really adjust to Mark Ruffalo. I don't know what it is. Mark Ruffalo, just I know that Bruce Banner is supposed to be a nerdy scientist and not really look cool. But I don't know. Peter Parker's supposed to be a nerd too. But, I don't know. It's just, Edward Norton and even Eric Bana, they just had better looks than, oh God, the Eric Bana Hulk movie. Are we really going there? Maybe we'll talk about that movie someday on this channel. Now, the thing that really won me over in this movie with Hulk was the fact that they fused both characters. I thought that was really clever. Having Bruce Banner talk as the Hulk, through the Hulk, in the Hulk's body, we finally got to see him in full control, and I really liked this change. I had never seen this before Endgame, and I really was a fan of this. And if they're gonna feature Hulk in any more films, I hope they stay true to this style that they presented right here, because I thought it was great, seeing Hulk with the human clothing, the big sweater vest. I thought that was great. It was something different to look at, a different sort of personality from him. The best of both worlds combined into one character. The alter ego meeting the other, the other alter ego, and I thought that was great. A great decision right there. At number 7, it was better than Age of Ultron and the first movie. Not better than Infinity War, which I still personally prefer, but I have to rewatch the first Avengers, really, because, it's been a while since I've seen that one. Age of Ultron, I still, to this day, I couldn't even believe what I saw when I saw that movie. That was definitely a step down from the first film. But this, it definitely has a lot to do with the plot and the fact that it's the finale. They feel a lot more urgent. There's a lot more going on in these films, and it definitely beats those first two films out by a large margin. So that alone is a good point. Usually, think about this. Most of the time, most movies, the first few are usually the best. That's not the case with the Avenger films, and that's really interesting. And that has a lot to do with the world building, and I've talked about this on a number of occasions, and a lot of Marvel fanboys gave me a lot of shit over this, and I don't see why it is, because they should actually be happy that I'm asking for this. I wanted more from those films. I wanted to see more. I wanted the Avengers to do more. I wanted the characters to be explored more. And, they did a lot of that in the last two films, but they didn't really do that so much. And you could say, well, okay, Brad, that's for the single films and everything. But failing to realize, that's why we have Captain America and Thor films to flesh those characters out. Now, what about the Hulk? And what about Hawkeye? And what about Black Widow? They don't get their own solo movies. The Hulk's only got one, and that was with a different actor. So I never understood why people had so much of a problem with me saying that. What's wrong with wanting more? I don't get it. It's people always ask for more out of other movies, but with Marvel, it's like just enough. And I never got that perspective. I never understood why people were just fine with well enough, and accepting that the world building, excuse to me was good enough. When all I wanted to do was just see more, sooner, and you're rushing things, but really it wasn't, because we were getting things in such small doses. It was really ridiculous. So I'm happy to see that, with Infinity War and with Endgame, they went all in. They gave us a lot. They didn't really pull any punches. They just, basically let all their creative juices flow and let all the characters, do what they do best. And it didn't feel like anything was being restricted. At number 6, Thanos was the villain. Now, of course, we got to go back to number 7. Once again, because they're interlocking. One of the big problems, because I didn't mention this in number 7, because I didn't really want to spoil number 7 by saying too much about Thanos. But one of my biggest issues, what I made quite clear, is that the first Avengers movie didn't really have a villain. Age of Ultron did, but Ultron just was like, who is he? That, don't lie, read the comics. Everyone's going to say that, I know. They said it at the time when I put out that video. What was that, in 2015? Everyone said, you don't know who Ultron is, you don't know the comics and all that. And I get that. Maybe I'm uninformed when it comes to that, but I also considered Civil War to be very much of an Avengers film. The only Avenger that was not present was Thor. So that was very Avenger-y. And once again, there was no main villain. Barely a main villain. A Hydra agent. It just, to me, it didn't really feel like a superhero movie, because where there's superheroes, there should be a supervillain. Supervillain sometimes. But, that wasn't the case for the first two Avengers film, and if you want to argue that Civil War was sort of an Avengers film, because I'll make that argument. I've made that argument in the past. But starting with Infinity War, it finally felt like a superhero movie because they brought in the big guns, Thanos. You couldn't really go wrong with Thanos, and most people are clamoring for it, and that was the thing. It was like we had to wait many a year just to get to have a supervillain in those movies. And I was so surprised, everyone always complained, Spider-Man 3 had too many villains, there's too many villains and everything. And then when there was no villains, no one seemed to have a problem with it. So once Thanos came in, it seemed like everything was just fine, basically. It's not a perfect movie, but Infinity War was a damn good film. And it showed because, you had a powerful, charismatic, a looming presence in Thanos. More than just looming. He was there fighting the Avengers, tooth and nail. It was great. It felt like a real war. It felt like a battle. It felt like something epic was happening. It finally felt like something truly of consequence was occurring in the film. And that's why, I really wasn't too crazy about those first two films. It was because there was no villain. And how can you really get into a superhero movie without having, a proper villain in place? Or not even a proper villain, but really just any villains at all. At number 5, the strong ties to Guardians of the Galaxy. You had Gamora, you had Nebula, you had Rocket Raccoon. There was glimpses of Chris Pratt, especially at the end. And the fact that a large part of the plot is tied in to Guardians of the Galaxy and Nebula and the relationship between Nebula and Thanos. I mean, that's how Thanos finds out about the Avengers going back in time to try to, fix the past. That's something great, because a lot of times I feel like Guardians of the Galaxy, like I think most Marvel fans appreciate those movies, but I feel like because, like when I saw the first movie in theaters, I went into it not knowing anything. I remember when I first saw the trailer, I was like, what is this? Why are they even making a movie out of this? Is this a new comic? Is this an old comic? It's like, this isn't Captain America. This isn't Iron Man. This isn't Spider-Man. This isn't Hulk. It's not Thor. So they felt like very minor characters. But, you go see the movie, and I ended up liking it better than most of the main heroes, most of the individual Avenger movies, and way better than the Avenger movies. The Guardians of the Galaxy movies 1 and 2, great movies, great humor, great action, great character development. You fell in love with all the characters in the first movie, and you got a lot of memorable moments. So to see like that particular series take center stage almost, that was great, and I really appreciated that. And the fact that, they kept Rocket Raccoon around, I thought that was a great choice. The Guardians team is torn apart, but, Rocket's still in there. And, and Nebula, who's really like, I don't want to say a minor character, but a side character, definitely a supporting character. She definitely played a vital role in it. And remember, Thanos was like the first time he really appeared in a feature Marvel movie was in the first Guardians of the Galaxy, at the end. And I thought that was tremendous. It's like, and that's how it should be. If you're going to put a movie out, own it, and it is your own. Don't treat it like a side property, and they didn't. Even though it's not one of the main heroes, I like that. They did right by Guardians of the Galaxy, and it really made it feel like it was part of the Marvel universe, wholeheartedly. Number 4, it was ballsy. It was a little ballsy. They took some chances in this movie. Goes without saying, the biggest spoiler of all time, Tony Stark, the end of the movie, the most selfish character, self-absorbed. and he takes the bullet. He takes that figurative bullet at the end of the film. They made Thor fat and out of shape. They explored a depressed Thor. There were some things that were really and also, I'll be quite honest, after watching Boogie 2988 break down this movie, and I mean, I can't like the movie as much as he did. I think he was way more invested in it than I think a lot of people were. But he really did bring up some good points that when I actually really sat back and thought about it, I was like, maybe there's more to this movie than I originally thought. So, and so they did do a really good job at taking those chances. The beginning of the film, that they just go right in and Thor just chops off Thanos' head. I mean, there was some things here that you didn't see before. They changed Hulk around. They did different things, and I really enjoyed it. It was different. Some of the characters acted differently than they normally would. At the end with Captain America, they took a chance there at pissing off some fans, and I don't know what it is. It's very odd to me that when it comes to Marvel movies, it seems like this current crop of fans is just willing to accept anything, and I like that they're open-minded, but it's just they're always the ones to trash other properties. Like it's bad for Star Wars The Last Jedi to take chances. That's a horrible movie because they wanted to take some chances, and do different things with Mark Hamill's character and show Leia finally using the Force, because she should be able to use the Force since she's Luke Skywalker's sister. But, that's bad, but, us wanting to have Captain America retire, and give it, and give up the mantle to someone else, that's just all fine and well, apparently. And I was surprised, but from a certain perspective, I guess it's good that, people are accepting of that. It's, it shows that they try to do something artistically different, and people were, willing to take it in with open arms. And number 3, it didn't go full SJW. Now, there was a lot of, we talked about the Girl Power moment and all that. We talked about that, and Captain Marvel being shoehorned in here. But, this movie did do a lot of things that, people would probably, be offended by. They probably would, at least with Captain Marvel, rocking that Hillary Clinton short haircut, at least Rocket Raccoon says to her, nice haircut, or you're going to get another haircut. It was, they knew that not everyone was going to like that look on her. And so it's nice that it was self-aware. And, you saw with Thor, I forget who it was Kotaku or Polygon. Someone got offended by the fact that, Chris Hemsworth was wearing a fat suit. They thought it was, very offensive to fat people. So, the movie could have, definitely been squeaky clean. They could have ran it through an SJW filter, and made sure that it was, it was nice and safe. But, they made sure that they didn't do that. That looks like that's going to happen in Phase 4 more, but, this is nice that it didn't really feel like they tried to do anything that was, politically motivated, because we already know that Kevin Feige was very politically motivated during the promotion of the Captain Marvel movie. So it was nice that, they did let her destroy all Thanos' ship, but at least she gets swatted away at the end. So it could have been worse, is all I'm saying. It could have been worse, and it didn't. They weren't as focused on that as they could have been, is all I'm saying. At number 2, they fleshed out the characters once again. Tony Stark, Thor, Hulk, we saw different dimensions of these characters. We saw a little bit more of who they are. And it was nice to see different. You wouldn't even perceive that Tony Stark would be like a good, caring father. You would think so self-centered and everything, but you see him like living in a log cabin, with his daughter and everything, and it's very heartfelt and touching. And I really like that they took the time. You would think in 3 hours, of course they would, but it was nice to see them, going deeper with a lot of these characters, something that you would only see usually in their solo movies. But it seemed like they did more for the Tony Stark character here than they did in Iron Man 3, which is surprising when you really think about it. And number 1, the epic feeling of it all, especially at the end with the big battle, everybody reappearing and seeing Spider-Man once again and the rest of the Guardians of the Galaxy cast, and it really felt like a finale. They tied up a lot of loose ends and everything, and we found out the destinies and the fates of a lot of characters, and that's the thing about it. It was a good way to cap it off. Could it have been better? Yes. Could it have been shorter? Yes. We could go on all day about that, but if you want to hear more about that specifically, you could go watch my review of the movie. But I was pretty satisfied with the way how they ended this. The big battle with Thanos' army, that's all you could hope for. And, very poetic that, the snap of the fingers from Tony Stark and Thanos and all his army, just fades away, just like at the end of, Infinity War, but the shoe is on the other foot. And, that's a classic kind of ending to pull the old switcheroo, and I liked it, and it worked for what it was. Were there things in the movie that were derivative? Of course. But, sometimes the classics are the best way to go. Things that work, sometimes they should be repeated. They're old movie tropes. They're, endings that have been done 1,000 times. But, this was a good way to end it off. And I felt it was epic. It was. And there you go, guys.